Welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. A little bit early this morning, I'll tell you why in a moment, but we've got a couple of transfer stories to delve into at the start. Man United facing an £80 million transfer battle, and it both includes Bundesliga players. We're talking Nmecha at Dortmund and Brown at Frankfurt, which is quite coincidental. If you didn't watch the video last night, we'll talk about that as well. Also, Romano, an update on a player that will be leaving Manchester United this summer that's not Casemiro. We'll talk about that as well. Some interesting stuff coming out about Michael Carrick and a couple of other transfer stories as well. So a little bit early this morning because my son is playing a match at 11:15. So if I did 10 o'clock, we wouldn't be there on time. So a little bit early this morning. But we are live on That's Football at 2 o'clock for Forest against Liverpool and then the North London derby. Couple of really good results for United yesterday as well. Villa drawing to Leeds and Chelsea drawing to Burnley. So first things first, let's start with a positive this morning. The league table is looking very, very good for Manchester United. Obviously, we're playing tomorrow night, but that was perfect for us yesterday. Absolutely perfect. I mean, Chelsea also have got Arsenal and who have they got next? They've got Arsenal and they've got somebody else difficult. I can't remember who it is. They've got two difficult games, Chelsea, coming up. And Villa away. So they'll eat each other, Villa and Chelsea. So look, very good for us. We've just got to do our business, but very good result for us. And if Liverpool don't win at Forest, it's even better. So big weekend for Man United and positive about that as well. Now, yesterday, I put up a video about left backs. I did one last week about the midfield. A lot of people liked it. If you haven't checked it, it's on the homepage. I found our new left back, and I think I have. And there's some really good options at left back. The big question is, will Manchester United go and sign one? Well, this morning, interestingly, Caught Offside is talking about a battle for Nathanial Brown of Frankfurt, who I did feature on my video last night. So apparently there is interest from Europe, but more importantly from the Premier League, specifically Manchester United and Arsenal are interested in the young German left back who plays for Frankfurt. Now, I read the article on it and it is quite interesting because it talks about how he's got a defensive solid game. I mean, Frankfurt, from covering the Bundesliga this season, Frankfurt are anything other than solid at the back. Defensively, they're a bloody nightmare. I think they conceded another 3 to Bayern yesterday, although it was Bayern. They concede a lot of goals. They're not in relegation trouble, but they've conceded more goals than anybody in the league, I think, and they're in the top half of the table. So they defensively solid, I don't think, is something that you can attribute to Frankfurt. So therefore, I wouldn't read too much into that. I personally don't think he's particularly great going forward either, but he's a young player. It could be for Val again. He could turn out to be absolutely brilliant. And it is a player that I was talking about last night. So it'll be very interesting. And again, if it's true that Arsenal are looking at him as well, then, you know, you would obviously say, well, maybe Man United should be looking at him. Maybe the profile of the player is really good. As I always say, Roy Keane got relegated with Nottingham Forest. Would you ignore that deal because he got relegated? I mean, he was one of the best midfielders in the league at that point. He got relegated, came to Manchester United and became one of the best midfielders in the world. So you have to be wary of team performance and look at individual performance. And whilst we're talking about that, by the way, Brighton did win yesterday. Baleba didn't play. So, you know, I saw people going yesterday, oh, Baleba's back. I was like, no, he didn't fucking play. He didn't start the match. I think he came on, but I think he came on at some point, but he didn't start the game. And again, just another indication of the problems there are around somebody like Baleba, who individually is not very good, but his team did all right yesterday. So I think that I think with Nathaniel Brown, it's an interesting one. As I say, check out the video I did last night on left backs. I think there are some very interesting left backs that are already playing in the Premier League. And I don't think they'll be necessarily more expensive. For example, Anthony Robinson is a much better left back than Nathaniel Brown. He might be 6 years older, but he'd be a lot cheaper. And his output is incredible in the Premier League. So I think our left back resides in the Premier League, whether that's Maatsen, Hall, Robinson, Truffert. There are some really good left backs. Check out that video. I don't think Nathaniel Brown is the answer for Manchester United at left back. However, it doesn't mean we won't do it. As I've said before, we were linked to Nicholas Jackson in the summer and we wanted him. Just because we don't think this player might be right for Man United doesn't mean Wilcox doesn't. I mean, look at Liam Delap. Chelsea are down to 10 men yesterday. He comes on, they're down to 9. He's absolutely not good enough for a top 5 club. and Wilcox wanted this to be the guy leading our line this season. So, and they still want Belabor. So maybe they will go for someone like Nathanial Brown, who, in my opinion, I think there are better options. Now, the second player we're talking about this morning is Felix Nmecha, however you pronounce it, at Dortmund. We have been tentatively linked to him. And again, another story this morning coming out from Germany that Manchester United are very interested, as are Chelsea and Tottenham. Well, rule out Tottenham, because if they get relegated, they ain't going to go there, is he? And if they're not in Europe, they're not even going to go there either. So competition with somebody like Chelsea might be quite interesting. Chelsea are always looking for midfielders. But look, again, another player with a couple of years left on his contract from the Bundesliga, in his mid-20s, who's having a very good season, who I think, when I've watched him play for Dortmund, who are doing very well this season, just looks like he's made for the Premier League. He's tall, he's physical, he's good on the ball, he can score a goal, he can defend. I think he's a very interesting player. And obviously doing business with Dortmund isn't always easy, and you can bring players in from the Bundesliga that don't necessarily settle. We've certainly seen it with Zirkzee so far at Liverpool, and we've seen it with players at Man United in the past from the Bundesliga. But I do think he's an interesting profile of player. I just get confused by these sorts of deals, because it feels to me, if we do start wandering towards a player like this, are we not wandering away from the targets that we've been told we're going for, which is Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, Angelo Stiller, Carlos Belabor? Why is Nmecha coming into the equation? I mean, I do like the player, and I think it would be, I do think he would improve us. And I think some people go, oh, he's not better than this, he's not better than that. I mean, there's no reason to say he isn't better than Agate or Mainu in relation to the job he can do. And I certainly think he would add something to our midfield. I would say that if we go for Nmecha, he'd have to be second or third midfielder. He couldn't be the primary midfielder. This is the sort of midfielder I was talking about in January, where you go for Conor Gallagher, because would he improve us today? Yes. Will he improve us tomorrow? Yes. Is he the number one midfielder we need to go for? No. I think the number one midfielder we need to go for is probably a Anderson or a Stiller in my mind. But as the second or third, I don't mind us being in for him, and you have to have backup options. But as I've said to you many times before, I think we will sign Belabor, and that's a mistake. And I think that if they sign Belabor, the second midfielder is going to be very interesting, because if it's Belabor and Nmecha, I think that's a fail. I think that's a fail, because I don't think Belabor's good enough to be the A-star signing, and Nmecha is a second midfielder to that. I don't think that's very inspiring. I think if you go for Anderson and Stiller, that's the level I want Man United to be pitching in at. We want to catch Man City. We want to catch Arsenal. We're not going to do that with Belabor and Nmecha. So Anderson and Nmecha, fine. But Belabor and Nmecha, not good enough. So that's what worries me about United. You get all this talk about we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other. And the reality is, are they? We need to close the gap on the people above us, and we need to do that with better players. And the midfield is the priority, as everybody says. But I agree with Melka, who says Nmecha is a beast. He is, definitely. And I agree with Dr. Strange that we do need midfielders first. Kumo says, you were tripping talking Conor Gallagher, he's shy. Yeah, but I mean, mate, he plays for Spurs now. So what do you want to do? Regurgitate a story? I thought Conor Gallagher played very well against Man United. I thought he played very well against Manchester City. And I think he's been very good for Spurs since he went there. And I would have took him, and I still would take him. You disagree? Oh no, what are we going to do? I mean, we're just wasting seconds. I'm not going to back down. There is no evidence to say that would have been a bad move for Manchester United when we've got no midfielders. So, you know, well done, you've got an opinion. I had an opinion. If I'm going to change my opinion, I'll tell it you. I've not changed my opinion on that. And I'll state the same thing. I think Nmecha falls into the same category as Conor Gallagher. He won't be the most inspiring player, because we have got arrogance in our fan base that they seem to think we should be signing Rodri. We haven't been in the Champions League spots for 50% of the last 13 years. We haven't competed for a title in 13 years. We're nowhere near winning a title or a Champions League in the next 5 years, in my opinion. And people talk arrogantly about people like Conor Gallagher and Nmecha like we're a club that's winning the Premier League. You've got to climb the ladder. And I look at our midfield, and it's bereft of quality and quantity. So we have a limited budget. if you go for your star midfielder, and I don't know who that's going to be because I don't think we're going to get Elliot Anderson, but if Balaba's the star and we're willing to pay £70 million for him, which is incredible to me, then the second midfielder is not going to be Adam Wharton or Elliot Anderson. It's going to be somebody who's a lot cheaper than that, and that's where the likes of Nmecha are going to come into it. Certainly. JXX says, I hate playing on Mondays. Yeah, there's some people talking about us playing today. We're not playing today. We're playing on Monday. I absolutely hate Monday night football, but this is what happens when you shit and you don't play in Europe because the Premier League go, nobody watches Monday night football, so let's put Man United there as much as possible. Robbie was on about it on That's Football a few weeks ago. They did this to Arsenal the year that they didn't finish in Europe as well. If you don't finish in Europe and you're a big club, they'll put you on Monday night football as much as possible because nobody watches Monday night football unless it's a big team. So you put Man United on there and you're boosting the Monday night football, which helps them with their sponsors. So that's why, how many times have we played on Monday night? 4 or 5 this season, and we'll probably be doing it again at some point as well. So if you don't want Monday night football, don't be shit, basically. Next season, Tottenham, Newcastle. Get ready for Monday night football, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Exactly, says Chain says. We play on Mondays because we can bring in the numbers on the weekday. Okay, let's move to Fabrizio this morning. He's talking about Manchester United. Just before we do that, though, this caught my eye, and I'd love to see it happen. Oliver Glasner, Crystal Palace, there's problems like that they basically sort of probably do want to part ways. Very nearly left at the end of last week. This has got nothing to do with Glasner being Man United's next manager. I just don't think that will happen, and I don't think it can happen. However, they are trying to get Gareth Southgate to come in and be an interim for Crystal Palace until the end of the season. Now, this could be a good thing or a bad thing, because if he goes into Palace and does well, surely they'd offer him the job. Interim tends to lead to full-time job, which takes him out of the Man United equation. On the other hand, if he takes it and does well, does that make him more attractive to Man United because he becomes Premier League proven? Personally, I'll live with the fact that he goes to Palace and is not on the equation for Manchester United. I'd like to see that. Also, just talking about left-backs, DiMarco is now only 1 assist away from matching the all-time assist record in Serie A. The record is held by Papu Gomez, who set a record for the most assists in a single season with 16 for Atalanta in 2019-20. DiMarco has 12 more games to play and break the record in his last 6 games. So he's got 15 assists this season, DiMarco. This is sending some Man United fans into freefall. They're going, DiMarco's got to be the left back for Manchester United. As I say, check the video I did last night. I did talk about DiMarco, but there's a very good handful of reasons why we shouldn't go anywhere near DiMarco as our left back next season. I'm not saying I'd be crying if we did it, but I think there's a massive transfer from the Italian league to the Premier League, and at 28, I think we're in a very fortuitous position. If you check out that video, I'm not here to bore you this morning, and I won't bore you on that video, but we're in a very fortuitous position when you look at left back, there are so many good left backs in the Premier League that can be bought. You don't actually need to take any risks on a foreign player from a foreign league. And Luke Shaw's output at left back is criminal. Check out the video. I'll tell you now, absolutely criminal. His output as an attacking left back is fucking rubbish. Rubbish. Like, absolutely terrible. So let's talk about what Fabrizio had to say, and he had to say this. He said, talking about movements this summer, basically saying that Zirkzee and Serie A remains a strong possibility with Juventus interested. Zirkzee remains professional at Manchester United, but wants to play more regular football. Well, look, I actually have a different take on this. I think Zirkzee was going to go last summer and stayed. Was going to go this January and stayed, and now everyone's saying he's going to go in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed, because I think every time it looks absolutely nailed on that Zirkzee's going to leave Man United, he ends up staying. And he obviously likes it here, and he obviously is very professional. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed. However, I will say again, absolutely does need to leave Manchester United, because there's just no pathway to the first team for him at all at the moment. And I don't think he suits this system at all. I don't know why we bought him, to be honest. And this sounds absolutely horrible, but I think you need to be blunt, and there's something else I want to be blunt about as well. I do not understand why we bought him. He was never really an out-and-out striker. He was always a technical striker, and we never needed that because we've got Bruno Fernandes. We don't need a striker that drops in like Harry Kane and is involved in the build-up. We don't need that. We need an out-and-out number 9. So I think Zirkzee does need to leave, like Warren Jr. said, and I think that we can probably get our money back because I still think there's a very good player there and he's very appreciated in Italy. Like Ruud Gullit said, I just think it was a bad move for him and a bad move for us. And sometimes I think you jump into a deal because you're desperate. And if you remember that summer, we actually were looking at Sesko under Ten Hag, and then he decided to stay at Leipzig. So we actually ambushed Milan's deal. He was meant to be going to Milan. In fact, I think Romano was basically close to saying, here we go to Milan for Zirkzee. So we ambushed that deal. And I think that, again, you could almost say that was another mistake by Wilcox and Ineos because they were involved in that. And obviously Agate as well. And I think they got a few transfers wrong that summer. But yeah, he needs to move on. There's no doubts about that. I think it's absolutely nailed on that he should go, but I wouldn't say it's nailed on that he will because he has survived a couple of transfer windows where you would have thought. And look, we don't know what Man United's stance is, but he's got no chance of going to the World Cup. And I think if he'd gone to Italy, he would have had a chance. You look at that Netherlands squad, it's not that good. And if he'd gone to Italy in January and scored a few goals, I think he would have been going to the World Cup. So it's interesting that, but yeah. Okay, get ready for the PR piece. Nathan Salt in the Daily Mail. I don't think he's on the Carrick payroll, but he's definitely in the fan club. Everything he writes seems to be about Carrick's movements and positive. And here we go again. Carrick made 2 key changes, shortening training for intensity and delaying arrival times for home games to 1 hour 45 minutes before kick-off, aiming for a better atmosphere. He's also adjusted away game arrival times to match the new home routine. Carrick also speaks to the players immediately after games, which was rarely Amorim's way. They find him more approachable than his predecessor, who often appeared aloof. So Nathan Salt and his Amorim hit squad is out in force again this Sunday morning, which is very interesting that we get an article like that coming out on Sunday morning. And yet Dalot and Cunha in the last few days have praised Amorim and how much they liked him. But Nathan Salt knows best in the Daily Mail. You know, apparently Nathan Salt's spoken to players in the Daily Mail and they weren't happy under Amorim, but we've literally heard from Dalot and Cunha in the last couple of days about how much they liked Amorim. And that's been backed up by Mbeumo, Ahmad, Bruno, Maguire, Shaw. So who are these players that didn't like Amorim? Because it's just, I tire of this nonsense, you know. Michael Carrick's the manager. We need him to do well. We need him to win. But this constant cheerleading for Carrick from certain journalists, and the only thing they've got is to try and slag Amorim off. And they always use the same thing that's not true. Oh, the players found Amorim aloof. Well, they didn't. Because the players keep coming out and saying how much they liked him, mate. So try a different angle. And also, I've got to say, and I don't really want to say this, but I will. Carrick's made 2 key changes. He's shortened training and he's letting players arrive later for games. Well, I'm sorry. Why would I cheerlead that? So we're training less and we're arriving at the ground later. And this is this is just to make the players feel happy. I'm sorry, this might be a really out there statement, but I don't think Man United players need to be pampered anymore. They're playing 1 game a week. Last weekend, they're on holiday. But it's not the international break. They're on holiday because they're shit, because they're not in Europe. And you're telling me we should be applauding the fact that we're reducing the training time and letting them turn up later. They're not in fucking Europe. They're not in the Cup. They're already doing less than everybody else. And now we're going, oh, well done, he's letting them do it. I mean, it must be a bloody holiday at Man United at the moment. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to sit here and think, look, if we were playing every weekend, midweek, like Arsenal and Man City, and Carrick said, I'm reducing the training times and we can turn up a little bit later to give you... I completely agree. I completely agree. It's going to make the players feel a little bit less worked. But they're doing next to fuck all anyway. They're on the easiest routine a Man United player's had in over 100 years. and Carrick's given them even less time. Now, there might be a medical or physical sports science reason for why he's doing it, but let's not start championing it. It just, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like Carrick's doing everything to make the players like him. That is not the way to coach anybody. You don't go into a job and turn up with a box of sweets and say, like me. Like, that's how that reads, though. Hopefully that's not what's happening, but I don't read articles like that. And to be honest with you, I don't believe articles like that anyway, because it contradicts a lot of what players have actually said. But I don't think, it's like players, remember the stories about Man United players not being happy about having to drive home in the dark? We have a dressing room culture for over a decade that's not been good enough. I don't like reading stories about managers coming in and making players happy, because the last thing those players need is to be made happy. They need to be worked harder. And last time out, we were fucking shit against West Ham. So what did your reduced training time and arriving late for games do for West Ham? Or are we just going to ignore West Ham and go back to the 4 wins? Like, West Ham was about as ambitious as a wet fart. It was a crap performance. There was so many bad performances. We did well to get an equaliser, and we should applaud that. But it was, in general, it was a shit performance. And what was the excuse for that? Oh, because we played on the weekend. Oh, did we? We played on the weekend and then we played midweek. What, like every other top club has to do every week? So, you know, I just think it's obviously it's got nothing to do with Carrick. But what I'm saying is it's the cheerleading of, oh, Carrick's really popular because he lets them have less training and he lets them arrive later. Oh, yeah, and the last manager didn't do that. Well, when we've won 10 games in a row and we're top of the league, then we can maybe go, oh, reducing training was a good idea. But I'd still say they've got every bloody week off. Man United this season under Amorim and Carrick have not done what I saw Chelsea do and Liverpool do when they... I remember that Brendan Rodgers season when they nearly won the league. They weren't in Europe. The first 20 minutes, the amount of times they were 2-0 up was incredible. The first 20 minutes of games when Liverpool weren't in Europe under Rodgers, they would absolutely blitz teams. It was like a blitz for 20 minutes. They'd just be all over you. I've not seen us start a game like that once. Maybe Man City. Maybe Man City we did, to be fair. But we should be absolutely blitzing teams. We should be so full of energy, we don't stop. We shouldn't need to be resting them even more. Sorry, I don't want to read that. Nathan Salt again, boring. But this one's quite interesting. Carrick's move mirrors Solskjaer's after Mourinho's 2018 exit. This is Nathan Salt again. Solskjaer, Daily Mail. Solskjaer countered Mourinho's negativity and Carrick is refreshing after Amorim's tenure. Though not as toxic as Mourinho, Amorim's handling of Mainu and public comments caused issues at Old Trafford. Carrick's success on the field and silence off it has pleased the club's management. I mean, what's that supposed to mean again? So basically, you're trying to use a headline to say that Carrick's like Solskjaer, Mourinho was negative and toxic, and Amorim was as well, but not as negative and toxic, and the management like it. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. That's why I'm calling it out, because I've got players out here doing interviews saying how much they like Amorim. And then you've got a journalist going, oh, Amorim was really toxic and the management are really happy. Well, the management appointed Amorim. I think we need to cut through the shit here and just say, every journalist who slags Amorim off for the club's benefit, why don't you wake up and smell the coffee this morning? Who appointed Amorim? The board. Who interviewed Amorim? The board. So if they think Amorim was wrong, a fraud, toxic, whatever, are they going to put their hands up and do an interview and go, we did it again. We did it again. Not only Ten Hag, not only Dan Ashworth, not only hundreds of millions of pounds spent, but also Amorim as well. We are fucking shit at our job. We've made multiple errors at the football club. We're absolutely terrible at what we're doing. We are responsible. Well, they're not going to do that, are they? They're just going to get certain journalists to try and slag Amorim off and pretend that they're competent. You picked Amorim, you bloody idiots. You picked him, like you picked bloody keeping Ten Hag, like you picked Dan Ashworth, like you've spent all this money, like you spent £60 million on Agate, Jason, like you wanted Liam Delap, Jason. Are you going to own up to all that shit, or are you just going to try and hide behind Carrick's good work? Come on. You were going to give Ollie the job as well. You wanted to give Ollie the job. The only reason you didn't because there was a fan backlash. So look, call it out for what it is. This is just PR as per usual. And certain journalists who clearly don't support Man United and support their careers and the board need calling out for it, because it's just so ridiculous that they've apparently got sources who didn't like Amorim in the dressing room, and yet 90% of the dressing room has come out in the last 6 weeks talking about how much they liked Amorim. So I find it hilarious. I also think that all they've got is Mainu. All they've got is Mainu. And I agree, Mainu should have been playing for Manchester United, but are we going to start moving forward, or are we going to start moving back? And what worries me about it is what's the end game here? And the end game, I don't think the end game is even for Michael Carrick to get the job. I think the end game is to just continually slag Amorim off to try and make the board look competent. And some fans do fall for it. But I think all this PR is not about getting Carrick the job. I think it's about making Wilcox look competent. But you're incompetent, mate. You appointed the guy that you sacked. So you're responsible for that. You can't then go, well, I always knew he was shit. You appointed him. And also, you didn't sack him on results. You sacked him because he wanted to buy players in January and you said no. So, which we should have done. So I just think beware of this constant PR, because it contradicts itself. And Amorim's been sacked. Like, Amorim's gone. I think we're all capable of understanding that and moving forward. But they won't let us move forward because they keep regurgitating the same old shit. And Cunha literally did an interview yesterday talking about how much he liked Amorim. And Delo did it on Friday about how much he liked him. And Burmo did it a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, it's... I know Amorim's gone. I'm not saying he shouldn't have gone. We've moved on. But I'm so tired of the bloody constant PR of trying to make out Jason Wilcox knows what he's doing or Omar Barada know what they're doing. I'm tired of... I've seen it. Some of you might be too young. Most of us have seen it before. I've seen Ed Woodward do this. I've seen Richard Arnold do this. They spend so much time trying to spin a story. And the reality is, if you bring a lion home for tea and it eats your family, and then you're on the news going, well, you know, it's the lion's fault. You brought the fucking lion home. You went to the zoo, you bought the fucker, you brought it into the kitchen, you closed the door and you left it in the kitchen. You brought it home and you're blaming the fucking lion. And that's what I feel about this board. Every bloody time. Mourinho was at the club for 2.5 years. They spent a year slagging him off to make Ollie look good. And they appointed Mourinho and they kept him for 2.5 years. And it was absolutely fine when he was winning the Europa League. But then the minute he went, oh, Mourinho was toxic. Mourinho is the best example of how this club operates. He was here for 2.5 years. He won trophies. But when he went, they acted like he was the devil. They acted like he was horrific because they needed to make him look evil and them look good. And we brought Ollie in and Ollie's at the wheel and all this. And that's what they do. But people seem to forget. They bring these people into the club. They should be taking responsibility for it. And at this football club, we never do that. Sir Jim Radcliffe, Joel Glazer, they never figure out the incompetence is not the manager you sack. It's the people who tell you that's the manager. And we always keep the people who make the bad decisions and remove the manager. And this is why we keep going round this cycle, because we keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Glazers can buy United stand for 1 billion instead of RCB, says Amit. They can try. I know this off topic, but I was on your sister channel watching Chelsea watch along. We dodged the Delap disaster, says Ray Carl Brown Amori. Oh, 100%, mate. Liam Delap is not an issue for us. It could have been. But the talent profiling that Jason Wilcox does is scary, because I don't know what he's... I remember last April when we got told that Liam Delap was the priority for Man United. In fact, we broke it on this channel in the first week of April. And I was like, I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this because I don't want Liam Delap. But I know the source and I know it's good and I know Man United want him. And I think they're going to get him. And I was like, I don't think he's good enough. I don't rate Liam Delap. And everyone was having a pop at me. Some people agreed, some people didn't. I didn't want him because I don't think he's the finished article. And looking at him at Chelsea, I think he's worse than he was a year ago. I actually think he's gone backwards. I think he needed to go from Ipswich to Everton and play every week, and he'd become a better player. He's killed his development by going too fast too soon, and that's a lesson, I think. What does it mean for Shaw when all 3 goals in the City game came from left-backs? O'Reilly and Hall are absolute ballers. Also, stack free kickers in Staines, says Rajaf. Luke Shaw's attacking output is abysmal. Statistically abysmal. Check out the video I did on the homepage last night. Okay, big day today. That's football. Couple of big watch-alongs. One involves United because it's Forest against Liverpool. We need a result there. And then it's the North London derby. And we are back here at 8 o'clock tonight with an 8 o'clock Sunday night show. So looking forward to that. Apologies if you missed the show live, but there's lots for you to get your comments in about early this morning because I've got a match to go to with Seb. Thanks everybody for watching. Smash a like on the video and I'll speak to you again later. Hopefully you can join us on That's Football as well. Thanks for watching.